Welcome to the Speak Like a Leader podcast with John Bates. Welcome to the show. With me today, I have someone that I have known since, just after the turn of the millennium. So, early 2000s, we both worked at a place. And, the guy's picture, the guy who owned the place, his picture is up on my wall right over there. His name is Eckert Vinson. And he was one of my dear, dear friends. He was a Dutch billionaire who had started this place called Expression Center for the Arts. And it was a new media arts place. And I was working with Eckert there and doing a lot of outreach for the company. And Paul was there doing finance. And Paul and I got to be friends. And we have known each other since then. And then a little while ago, it's years now, Paul reached back out to me and we did some work together, got back in touch, and have just been rolling together ever since. And I'm really, really excited to introduce you to Paul Gigliotti. He's the COO of Pinnacle Home Loans, and he's the CEO and co-founder of Access Lending Academy. He's just a great, great guy with some amazing, amazing stories. And I'm really happy to have you here, Paul. Did I get that pretty much right?
You got it spot on. And as you were talking, I was like, wow, turn of the century. Holy moly.
Turn of the millennium, right?
Yeah. So it has been quite a while that we've known each other. And I am very grateful for how our relationship has evolved and, us supporting each other still after all these years. We had a little disconnect for a while, as a lot of people do, but
just didn't see each other, right? We just were both busy.
Yeah.
But so tell us, you're the COO of Pinnacle Home Loans and you're in California.
Yep. Pinnacle Home Loans is based in California, but we do, we're licensed and cover all West Coast states.
Oh, that's cool.
I've been in the mortgage industry since right after Expression Center for New Media. I immediately went to the mortgage industry. So I would say around 2004.
Yeah. Okay. So there's been some interesting rides in that industry for you as a leader in that industry.
Yeah. A lot of it around, our economic roller coaster, if you will, dips down every 10 years. And so mortgages are so closely related to what occurs on Wall Street that we follow that suit. Right now is another interesting time, but I'll tell you, as a professional, I'm really excited to see the mortgage lending industry or the housing industry really start to open up their ears and eyes to paying attention to running companies with a soulful purpose, if you will. So a lot of mortgage companies are really stepping back and saying, it's time to look at our team as our biggest asset. It's time for us to sit back and realize it's not all about units and volume. It's about providing housing for diverse individuals, giving individuals the ability to be first-time home buyers, educating them. So it's an exciting time for me because, my philosophy in leadership is based off the concept of I'm here to ensure your success. I'm here to make sure that every one of our team members is growing and expanding, whether it's at the company that we're currently at or preparing them to fly the nest and, go somewhere else where they can reach for a new ceiling or reach for new heights. So I'm gelling right now a lot with what's occurring in the housing and mortgage industry.
Well, for a long time, that industry, if I'm not mistaken, has been a little bit of kind of a boiler room mentality, right?
Yeah.
Sort of how many calls did you make today? And,
Yeah, it's interesting, John, because it's so, and I was just talking to someone about this and the concept was diversity in our industry. And as well as, why is money the number one? It seems to be the number one influencer in our industry for decisions.
Yep. Sure.
The mortgage lending industry is based off of money. I mean, that's all it is. So of course it has to do with money because that's what it's based off of. From money, trickles down corporate social responsibility, supporting a healthy, diverse, environment and culture, making sure that everybody has access to buy a house. All those things trickle down from the money, but it's
Yeah.
all mortgage lending it's money, it's monetized.
Yeah.
Um, so I think what people are starting to do, especially after the pandemic, especially after the need to connect, there needs to be, right now, wherever we're going, we're looking for a relationship. We're looking for making that connection and understanding what the relationship is about. I think the mortgage lending industry is sitting back and saying, it's connection, not just with the consumer, but it's connection with our team,
Right.
because they're supporting the production or the manufacturing of this product or good.
Right.
Um, so you're right. It was a dialing for dollars type of industry. And I think now, like many other industries, it's going through a rebirth, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and we're talking in February of 2022. So 2022. And I do think that there has been a new realization of the importance of people to this whole business thing, right? Which is not necessarily news for everybody, but it certainly seems to be news for some. And it reminds me of what you said reminds me of what um, Richard Branson said. Uh, and he said, out of shareholders, customers, and employees, the most important people to make happy out of those three are employees, because if the employees are happy, then the customers are happy, and if the customers are happy, then the investors are happy.
Yep. You
And
nailed
he's
it.
not known for not making money, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's a beautiful philosophy. And what's really interesting is I take that philosophy and that's very much how I operate at work and at home. So I often
Yeah.
speak about this concept of having a whole self approach or an integrated life. I don't
Yes.
believe in home work life balance. I don't think that works because that doesn't
Yeah.
allow you to be 100% of who you are, right?
Yeah.
Um, I look at who is this individual? Who am I? How do I treat my peers at work, my team members at work? How do I treat my kids at home? How do I treat my husband at home? What are all those relationships like?
Yeah.
It was funny when you said a happy team leads to happy customers, leads to a happy board and happy investors. As you were
Yeah.
talking, it was like, yeah, a happy 6.5-year-old, a happy 3.5-year-old, a happy husband
Right.
leads to a happy
Yes.
household. And that makes for a great night. It's all the same. And so I think as we're talking about the mortgage lending industry being more people centric, people focused, it's really nice to bring
Yeah.
in that concept of, are you good at home? Are you good at work? As a leader, let me support you just 100% to make sure
Right.
that you're coming to the table with 100%.
Well, it's something that I've watched over my career, Paul. I think that there's certainly kind of this old school way of being where like there's work and then there's personal life and never the twain shall meet, and like they're just two separate things and right. But that just is not reality. And if something's going on at home that's not working or that's not right, or there's, something's up, that is going to impact work and vice versa. And to try to put a wall between those two things, I think it has quite literally killed a lot of people just because of the heart attacks they have, because it's so inauthentic and difficult to maintain that wall and to pretend that it should be there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's they're leading, you're when you do that, you're leading, a dual life because
Yeah.
you got to put on this different persona, this different suit, if you will, when
Yeah.
you walk into that office or you walk into that boardroom. And I gotta say, that's probably one of the most crucial um, lessons that I've had in my life to date
Yeah.
is being okay with who you are at home and at work, so you can walk in with pride and empowerment, and then understanding that you are where exactly you should be as a human, as an individual, which, comprises of the relationships with your friends and your family and your extended family and your peers in work. And, take for instance, you and I, John, I mean,
Right.
we know each other
Yeah.
somewhat intimately. We know each other's families. We know about how our families were started, but we also know each other on a professional level. And that's why there's such a great integration, or yin and yang, if you will, because we understand each other.
Agreed. Yes. Yeah. And I love that you care so deeply about your family. And I love that you are an integrated leader. And I think that that just increases my respect for you in your personal life and your work life, just in your life. And it makes me more excited to work with you, and it's more fun. And I feel like we've got an understanding that really supports everything we do. And that, I think, is what's available to people if they're willing to let down that wall. And, thinks, I think that people feel like it's sort of a risk to let people at work know you personally. Well, I mean, look, all of life is a risk. It's all a risk reward thing. And like, I think the rewards far outweigh the risks.
Absolutely. Yeah. Those risks are those growing moments, even
Right.
when you're
Right.
sad, or nervous or depressed, all of those feelings, that's all part of creating who you are and creating those relationships.
Yeah. Well, listen, if it comes to a question that I like to ask here, which is, where did you come from as a leader? What's kind of the origin of you, and why you are doing what you're doing, and why you care about what you care about? Would you share that with us?
Absolutely. I feel like I'm opening up the one of the Star Wars movies, because I want to say a long, long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, many years ago, the
Yeah.
creation of me has been, and like everybody else, just like you, John, it's been occurring, and it will always continue to occur. But that pivoting moment in my life, which I didn't realize was even that pivoting moment till recently, working with you, that very moment when I was standing on the cliff of an ocean, and I could hear the waves crashing against the side of this cliff. And I kind of remember like peering over the cliff a little bit and looking down and seeing these jagged rocks below me. And I was standing there, and it was such a powerful moment because the waves were so powerful and they were crashing up against this wall. And I was almost alone in this bubble. And I began having these flashbacks of my life, and my childhood life and my adult life, and a floodgate of all these memories that had brought me to this point of where I was, this actual time and space. I had memories of how grammar school mates used to ridicule me for being different and acting different, and how they used to make fun of me for the way I dressed, or the fact that I was more interested in art or dancing than sports. Um, I started thinking about my parents, and how they would catch me playing with my sister's Barbie dolls, and how they would shame me and tell me to go do boy things, ride a bike, or play sports with my friends. And at that time, I didn't have any friends. When I was being shamed, go play with friends, I was alone, and I wanted to be alone. I wanted to remain as silent as possible. And as I was standing on the cliff of this, on the cliff overlooking the ocean, I actually felt like that little kid. I felt like that little boy, and I had flashbacks that came to me when I came out to my parents and I told them I was gay, um, which was honestly, to this day, the very hardest conversation I've ever had, because my parents had expectations. I grew up in a very, very conservative family in this small, tiny town in Northern California, and they thought that I would be like the all-American dream, right? Go to college and get good grades and marry a woman and have kids. And so when I told them this, my parents told me that because of my choice, I would not have the life I wanted to live. I would never be able to find the love of my life, and growing up, there was 8 kids in our family. So we were always around kids, and I wanted to have children of my own. And my parents told me, because of my choice, that I would not be able to have kids. I was told that I would not be successful. Um, and they sent me to a psychologist to ungay me. And again, still standing, overlooking the ocean, I remembered what that felt like. I visually saw being dropped off at this psychologist who was going to try to fix me and not have me be gay anymore. And I know deep down inside my parents loved me. They were just afraid of this because it was all brand new to them. But John, I can't tell you how much that hurt. Back
Uh,
then, it was so confusing for this
mm,
18-year-old person, 17-year-old person. Um, and as I looked up from the ocean, I could feel the sun kissing the side of my face. And off in the distance, I saw these amazing whales. It was a family of whales, I kid you not. And I turned to face the person's hand who I was holding in front of all my family and friends. And I recited my wedding vows. Um, and it was one of the most powerful moments in my life, because it didn't have to do just with the fact that I was getting married to the love of my life, who I'm still married to and always will be.
oh,
But it meant that I did have the ability to find the love of my life, and we were going to start a family together. Um, it took me decades for me to get to this point in time in my life. I've only been married 10 years, and I'm 48. So it took me all the way to the point of being like 36. That's a long time.
uh,
Um, so because of that harassment that I had in my childhood and the bullying and the ridicule, that created this zero self-worth. And because of that self-worth, I had zero self-worth or lack of self-worth. I had no idea what my abilities were. I had grown to be ashamed of who I was because I was told I could not achieve what I wanted. Um, and I just can't tell you what an awful position that is to be
oh,
in.
yeah,
Um, Looking back, John, on those years, I now realize that a foundation was being laid for who I am today. And, I still get teared up when I talk about, when I have flashbacks to that ridicule and that harassment and that bullying, physical abuse and mental abuse. Not because of what that little kid was going through, but because of what that made, because every moment has a purpose and every second has a reason. And that young Paul needed to go through all of that, to be the man that I am today,
yeah,
because I had to grow to be okay with who I am. And I had to move through that sadness and all that disappointment. Um, and as I grew up and started to understand who I was, I created a second family. And my eyes and my heart became open to what I knew I wanted and could have. And I started to realize my dreams, because of this, because of seeing it was possible. I was able to then start to embrace my life and the fact that I was gay. And honestly, between you and I and everybody listening to me now, that means that I am absolutely fabulous, because I am this person who is full of creativity and art. And I also like sports. And, to me, I'm just this well rounded individual that cares about other people and that
yeah,
understands deeply who I am. And, I'm not here to talk about being gay or coming out or even understanding that being different is good or great. I'm here to talk about how important that relationship is between you and you, and how important it is for people to be authentically aligned with who they are and maintain that whole self approach.
yeah,
Um, as we were talking before about our professional integration between home and work and just being 100%, that's what it's about. Because prior to me understanding who I wasn't showing up aligned in all of my in all the areas of my life. Um, I was afraid to walk into a boardroom, and that if my handshake was too limp, I'd be ridiculed again. If I didn't have the most masculine voice, people would look at me and say, "Oh my gosh, he's gay. We don't want to hear what he has to say." You know, up
Mhm.
until recently, um, when I was invited, and this was just very recently, when I was invited to be on a panel for about a nonprofit I had created centered around being a diverse individual. Um, I have a funny story about this. The day before this panel, after a drink or two, I found the hall where the panel was going to take place. And it's this big, huge room. And John, you've been on the stage before many a times. I haven't been as much as you. And the stage was enormous. It was so big, and it had all this couch and this chair. And I saw the stage and I froze. I realized that I was going to walk up on stage and be on this panel in front of hundreds and hundreds of mortgage industry peers and speak about being different, about my story and why I founded this nonprofit, Access Lending Academy. So later that evening, I ran into this amazing individual, Susan, who's the CEO of the California MBA, who put this event together. Um, and I looked at her, and she told me of some important individuals that were coming to hear me speak, government individuals, and that I must have turned, when she told me that, I must have turned like four shades of white, and she saw me get extremely nervous. And I was afraid I wouldn't be able to communicate my point. And she looked at me and she said, "Paul, you got this. Everybody loves you and they want to hear from you. You're fabulous and you're going to be perfect." And then all of a sudden I realized at that moment, you know what? I was coming out professionally, and I wanted to hide, but I couldn't because my nonprofit is bigger. It's needed for all those little Pauls that are running around out there. And I also realized my professional life was, I was still staying quiet. And for my husband and my children and the individuals in this nonprofit, I had to show up as me on the panel and be authentically me. Every time I walked up on stage, my boss were the ones that ridiculed me or teased me. The audience was the one that told me that I'd never succeed, just as my parents had. Um, and so as I reflected and I realized that I was going to be the true who I am, I realized that I needed to show up with 100% of me. Um, and I needed to have that pride in what I had created in my life. And, I know, John, that I would not have been able to create what I've created, the relationships that I created, if I didn't go through what I went through as an individual, as being that diverse individual and taking that as power.
Yeah.
Um, so, we are talking about integration. I just want to bring up this one last point. As we were talking about the power of momentum and energy and being integrated. Imagine, if you will, you and this analogy always sticks with me, and I almost said it before. You and your favorite five people are lucky enough to share an amazing experience, a front row private concert by the New York Symphony Hall. And just the orchestra, the conductor, you and your favorite five people are in this symphony hall. You've got it all to yourself. And the orchestra portion starts to play. And the conductor raises his baton and begins to conduct. And then the trumpet section starts to play, which represents, my faith in myself. And it's beautiful and it's delightful, but it's just one piece of the orchestra. Then the string section immediately jumps in, which represents my family and my husbands and my kids, Cooper and Kennedy, and love and huge joy. And the energy begins to flow stronger. Then the piano comes in and represents professional growth and passion and purpose. And the cymbals come in, and you start to feel this momentum and you start to feel this energy. More and more energy is created in the drums, and the whole orchestra is playing. This is the symphony. This is what it feels like to be authentically aligned with a whole self approach.
Yeah.
This is all of you. This is all of your energy. And what's amazing is you realize that then you become the conductor. you become the one that gets to create your own life. And so that concept of being authentically aligned and 100% is so powerful. It's one of my it's my hope, and almost my legacy for people to understand how important that is.
Yeah. Well, and Paul, I remember a few years ago when we were talking. I hope it's okay if I share this. I think it is. And one of the things that we came up with is just where was your voice, right? And I think that you felt really like it was a very scary thing for you to speak up, right? Given the whole past and everything that had happened to you and all of that. And I think you had something that mattered more to you than your fear, and you did that thing that it is to do this. It's called courageous, right? It's never about fearless, because that fearless is stupid. Fearless just gets you killed. It's about courage, which means having your fear, but doing it anyway. And I have been deeply inspired by you having your fear, having something that matters to you more than your fear, and doing it anyway, right? And so tell us about Access Lending Academy, because it's just such a great concept. In full disclosure, Paul asked me to play a part in this, and I said yes. So I'm on the team of Access Lending Academy, lending what I can to the mix. But tell us about it, Paul.
Absolutely. It's a little bit of everything that I just spoke about rolled up in this amazing nonprofit. Um, there's so much opportunity out there, and what I realize is missing from the opportunity is, for people to access the opportunity, is education and support.
Mm,
Uh, Before we start, I will say Access Lending Academy in no way, shape, or form is a handout. It's a hand up to those that want a hand up.
yeah.
It's not a freebie, although the education is 100% free to our learners. But they have to work, and we lose probably about 40% of our learners through class, because all of a sudden they realize, oh my gosh, this is work.
Yeah,
Much
I
like
have to do something.
junior college classes, right? Yeah, they sit back and go, wow, I have a midterm, and I have this presentation, and I'm also working, and it's a lot. But our purpose is to bridge the gap of education and DE&I in the mortgage lending industry.
And
Uh,
what's DEI for those of us?
oh, yep. Thank you. Diversity, equity, and inclusion.
There you
Uh,
go.
so it's very much, what I went through as I grew up as an individual. Um, and so, man, I am so blessed on a daily basis to have this function and purpose that really invokes all of my personal calls to action.
Yeah,
And really invokes 100% of who I am, and lets me work with all of my deep rooted purpose, and
yeah,
how I came to who I was. That's success just in itself, really, honestly.
yeah.
Um,
Well, and what you do at Access Lending Academy is take diverse individuals and give them education, like personal growth and development education, mindset, body, all of that, self-worth, all kinds of great tools
yep.
for them to just be the best person they can be, and for them to understand themselves, and for them to gain that whatever levels of self-worth might be missing at first. And then once they go through all of that, you place them in a job that pays quite well.
Yeah. So spot on. But I'll add to that, while we're supporting their mind, body, and soul, well, we're also educating them on
Yes.
the mortgage lending industry. So they go to
Yeah,
class,
right.
right? And they're getting educated on what is a loan, how do you manufacture a loan, what opportunity is there within the housing industry or the mortgage lending industry. So while we're educating them and they're learning and growing, scholastically, book wise, we're also educating them on our learners on what to do with that education and how to bring that education that they're learning into their life, period, personal life and professional life. In fact, many of our learners that have been permanently placed in our alumni program um, often talk about how our education and our wellness at Access Learning Academy has supported this newness, has supported them really
Right.
understanding about relationships with children and parents and partners and loved ones. So it's absolutely amazing to hear stories and testimonials from learners about how Access Learning Academy has ironically shaped their life, much as how I shaped my life.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the beautiful things about life that I've just come to see over and over and over again as I do what I do is that, I think that one way to say it is when we are willing to step into what our life is calling us to do, e- everything is just aligned and all that stuff, like all the difficult things that you went through, Paul, all the experiences you went through that maybe you wouldn't even wish on anybody, but those experiences gave you the understanding and the compassion and the depth and the vision and the desire and the motivation to do what you're doing,
Yeah,
and it's just a perfect fit because it couldn't be otherwise. And that's one of the amazing things about life and about really getting clear on your story, right? And where you came from and looking back over it and digging up those resonances and putting it all together into a cohesive narrative that you get to have control over and you get to interpret, right?
yeah. It's amazing as you're talking, and I hope I don't segue too off into the weeds
No.
with this, but um, and I honestly don't even know if you know this, John. My family and I are relocating from California to Georgia. And did I tell you that?
You
Yeah.
you did tell me, yeah, that's quite a jump.
It is a jump. So we've been working on it since December, and it's right around the corner. Um,
Wow.
you saw the moving boxes behind me. It's about
Yeah.
3 weeks out, and it's been really interesting as you're talking about fear. We've been going through some stuff with our 6.5-year-old son Cooper in relation to him not wanting to leave school and being a little
Yeah.
nervous. And I had this amazing moment with him where I realized that, for the longest time as a parent, this with your baby boy, the last thing you ever want to see is them hurt or crying when it's out of fear or being scared or not
Right.
feeling, included or, being depressed. I'm the type of parent that's like, you're going to have the perfect life. I want you to just
Right.
be all the time and have everything that you want and excel and grow and succeed. And I'm going to be there every
Right.
step of the way. And all of a
Right.
sudden I realized with this fear of him going into a new school and, of course, we're on the other end doing everything to support his
Yeah.
growth. And he's already signed up for colleges or schools and sports and gymnastics and all
Yeah.
that stuff, and same with our daughter. But I realized a couple of, not too long ago, probably about 2 weeks ago, that how awesome it is to be there for him while he's afraid, while
Yes.
he's scared, and
Yeah.
to support and have conversations with him. And that's going to make us stronger because he's going to
Yeah.
realize that, his papa and his dada are there to be his foundation during that time and that he can move through this. And this is an amazing experience for him. And all of a sudden,
Yeah.
his acting out at school and sometimes home because of the fear turned into just casual conversation. Last night at dinner, we played this little game. And he raised his hand and said, we were talking about feelings, right? And so he raised his hand and said, I am so excited. I can't wait to move into our new house. I'm a little nervous about school, but I'm really looking forward to making some new friends. So just the transition
Wow.
between just 2 or 3 weeks of me being almost bashful for him to be afraid and wanting to block that fear in his life,
Yeah.
to opening up and letting the
Right.
fear come into his life, but him knowing that I'm there to support that. And so is his dad, to
Yeah.
the immediate transfer of, I'm not acting out anymore. And yep, I see this in front of me, but I'm going through it and we're going to be great. And I am a little scared, but you know what? I know it's going to be super rad. It was mind blowing to me to see that change in this little 6.5-year-old
Well,
dude.
I mean, and that's fabulous, right?
Yeah.
That's
Uh,
really cool.
yeah.
And it's so important, right? Because you can't insulate him from everything. And if you did, he would grow up like, without any of those amazing experiences that would create him in as being someone, right?
Yeah.
But if you can let him have that experience, but know you're there to support him,
Mhm.
that's a whole different thing, right? Now he gets to do it and he gets to have that experience and go through his fear, but he knows at the same time that he's supported. I think that's fabulous.
Yeah. And that's what
I
access
think
then
that's
encounter.
fabulous. I mean, and I was just going to say, I think there are tremendous. I think that there's a way that you could make the comparison that is, um, it's not really honorific, but I think that actually there are really great lessons about leadership from being a parent. Right? It's not like your employees are children, but there are great resonances between the experiences of being a parent and what you learn with your kids, and then how you can bring that to just anybody that you work with or lead or support or whatever.
100%. I got to tell you, I know we're coming up on time, but that's when I realized becoming a parent is when I realized this my calling to leadership, or how I was going to become a leader, and that's to ensure the success of every individual that I engage
Yeah.
with, whether it's at home or at work. When our son Cooper was born, we were in a really rough in utero experience, and we were told that he would have a very difficult life, physically, mentally, socially, um, because of his in utero experience. And I remember holding him. He was born, he was so tiny. He was almost 4 pounds. He went full term, but he
Mm,
was just this little tiny nugget. And we had to feed him every 2 hours to get his strength up and his weight up.
yeah.
And I remember holding him one morning. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning, and we have this beautiful Victorian house. And I was sitting in this bay window, overlooking this busy street. And as I was feeding him, I just remembered realizing and feeling him and I communicating, even though he was only 3 days old or 4 days old.
Yeah.
Um, I'm here to make sure you can do whatever it is that you want to do. My
Yeah.
purpose for being your parent is that you are going to grow to your fullest ability and desire. That is my
Yeah.
absolute purpose. And so it's really interesting to see um, that craft into who I am as an individual. I took that, and that's how that's how I operate just as a human, whether
Yeah.
again it's here at work, or it's our daughter, or it's my husband, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Um, and that's an amazing purpose.
That's
And so I'm
fabulous.
very, very blessed to have that be a part of who I am, and to realize that and to see that.
Yeah. And it's just such a fulfilling way to be too. So Paul, quick question, just for fun here before we go, because we are getting up on time. What what do you think about the importance of communication in leadership? Like, anything that you like, what comes to mind for you when I ask you that question out of your experience?
Well, it's something I learned from you, and that's there's a couple of things. One, you've got to be real with who you are, and bring in stories about your family and whatever your life is, right, outside of the office walls. I've also learned recently that it's okay to have emotion, not to be emotional, but to have emotion at work. and to really speak with intention and from where you are, from your moral compass, if you will. Um, I
Yeah.
I probably over communicate at work. I communicate everything. I'm a horrible poker face. If somebody's
Oh.
talking about wanting a raise, I'll communicate to them. Well, yeah, you got it, and this is why, or no, you don't, and this is why. So I think for communication as a leader, it's really just about being extremely authentic and very deep rooted with who you are. And if you can't be authentic, and you can't tell the truth for some political reason, then just don't speak. I think that's what one of the
Yeah.
important, key factors in communication as a leader is. And a lot of times we forget about that. A lot of times we forget that the person that we're
Yeah.
talking to is another human being, and they deserve to
Yeah.
hear the whole story and the whys and all that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fabulous. Well, Paul, I thank you very much for joining me. And I'm really, really excited about Access Lending Academy. How do people, I'll make sure it's in the show notes, but people can find you at, what's the URL?
Yeah, it's accesslendingacademy.com. Check us
Simple.
out. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. So we, everything that we're doing to bridge that gap of education and diversity, equity, and inclusion in one of the largest industries in our nation. It's all up there. A lot of speaking. If you're interested in breaking into the industry, check out our classes. If you're interested in hiring a diverse individual, whether you're in the mortgage lending industry, the housing industry, or solution provider in the industry, you can reach out to us and speak to us about our recent graduates or graduates that are about to graduate in March. There's lots of ways to get involved.
Awesome. Awesome. Good. And I'll put up your LinkedIn link. I'll put up accesslendingacademy.com. And Paul, thanks for who you are and thanks for what you do in the world. And thank you for, taking those things that, especially at the time, felt like incredible lemons and just making some fabulous lemonade.
Thank you, John. I appreciate being a guest on your show.
Well, thank you. We're glad to have you. And thank you for listening to Speak Like a Leader show. I wish you all the best until next time, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you for joining the Speak Like a Leader podcast. Go be awesome.